A top retired four-star admiral is giving an urgent warning to our military members to be very careful not to follow unlawful orders, to be very careful regarding any potential invasion of Karg Island or Iran, or to further escalate matters, to be very circumspect in the role of the United States military in protecting, preserving, and defending our democracy, the importance of both our hard power, but even more significantly, our soft power and the danger being caused to our country where we sacrifice all of our soft power because the Trump regime thinks this is woke or that it is inclusive or whatever pretextual reasons the Trump regime gives to try to destroy critical programs like USAID. And folks, an admiral, decorated, four-star, one of the most decorated in American military history, talking about the importance of being compassionate, empathetic, supporting immigrants, supporting diversity. This is one of the most powerful warnings I've seen recently, and it comes from an individual by the name of Admiral McRaven. You probably know Admiral McRaven, William McRaven, from the incredible commencement speech he gave. You probably remember it. I'll show it to you in a little bit as well. At the University of Texas in 2014, where he served as one of the leaders of the University of Texas. You probably know him because he is the admiral who led at the highest level the raid in 2011 that led to Osama bin Laden being captured and killed by our Navy SEALs. For over 3 decades, going on 4 decades, Admiral McRaven himself was the most decorated Navy SEAL out there. And in 2018, when Donald Trump was on a rampage, firing CIA Director Brennan and others, you had McRaven step up and basically said, take away my security clearance if you're going to go after Brennan. And he really asserted himself in a way that I'm not sure lots of people remember, but Admiral McRaven has been very outspoken. And right now he's lending his voice right now at a critical juncture. So I want to share with you what he said recently. And then I want to share with you former NATO Commander General Wesley Clark and what he's had to say, because you look at both of these individuals with decorated military backgrounds, and they are giving these urgent warnings that need to be heard right now. Set aside all the gamesmanship and the politicking and all of that. Let's just focus on what experienced military leaders, some of the most experienced who are still living, are saying right now. So first, I want to share with you what Admiral William McRaven had to say in this powerful interview that he just gave. And when he was asked about, well, what about the idea that's being floated right now of further escalating the war in Iran, putting boots on the ground, what say you, Retired Admiral McRaven? Watch this.
Certainly not recommend putting boots on the ground. One, people sometimes underestimate the size of Iran. I'm from Texas, Walter, and Iran is 2.5 times the size of Texas. And I try to explain to people, look, that's like telling people that you're going to put Marines in West Texas and expect them to move all the way to Houston. This is just, it's hard to do. Could we take Karg Island? Yeah, we probably could, but it would be very risky to do so. I don't see putting boots on the ground as a real option. Not to say the president won't, but I don't really know what it would gain him. What I have been saying from day one was that if the Iranian regime survives, Iran wins. And so right now, the president's in a very difficult position. The Iranian regime, unless there is a collapse of the regime and a more moderate theocracy or some other administration comes in, back to your question, are we any better off than we were prior to February 28th? Well, we have decimated their Navy. We have decimated their Air Force. We have certainly put back their nuclear program. But how much better off are we? I think that remains to be seen.
More from Retired Admiral McRaven right here regarding Donald Trump and Hexit purges of top military leaders, right? Whether it's former Army Chief of Staff, Randy George, whether it is the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, C.Q. Brown, whether it's other top leaders. Take a listen to what Admiral William McRaven had to say here. Play this clip.
I am concerned, of course, in the last year, the president has either fired or asked to retire somewhere around the neighborhood of 30 general officers. This has a cascading effect on the morale of the senior officers, not so much the junior officers and the junior enlisted, but it does have an impact on the senior officers. And I am concerned that it puts them in a position where they may be afraid to speak truth to power. You have an obligation as a military officer to always give your best military advice, not your best political advice, not what you think the president or the secretary wants to hear, but your best military advice. And we want to make sure that's that this purge, if you will, doesn't impact that.
And here's what Admiral McRaven had to say about USAID. Let's play it.
Oh, make no mistake about it. USAID was vital to our soft power in the world. And look, I got it. USAID probably had a lot of problems. Every government organization needs to be reviewed periodically. We need to kind of cut the waste. But at the end of the day, our ability as Americans to project soft power in the form of USAID and other humanitarian aid really, again, helped us with this reputation of being the good guys. Every time, Walter, there was an earthquake, a tsunami, a hurricane, any sort of devastation, the American military was there with our big deck amphibs and USAID care packages that we put forth in countries all around the world. And this was meaningful, again, in strengthening those relationships. So it's not just about being good for good's sake. Yes, that's important. But it also has this value of strengthening our alliances and strengthening the bonds so that when we really need them, they'll be there.
Then he talks about being the good guy and also how America is a country of immigrants, and we shouldn't forget that. Here, play this clip.
And when you look back over the last 250 years, I started off with saying, look, we do need to be the good guys. I talked about, the Marshall Plan and the Berlin Airlift and the things that we have done globally to strengthen America's sense that we are, we have the moral high ground. But then I talked about other things. I said, look, we need to be welcoming. The fact of the matter is we've got about 45 million immigrants that are here in the country now. We are a nation that has come over here by boat for the most part, either willingly or unwillingly. And the fact of the matter is we need to continue to be welcoming. We need to continue to be smart. I am concerned we are reducing our support to R1 universities, the research universities that really become the foundation for a lot of our growth and our innovativeness. We need to continue to be strong, no question about it. We need a strong military. We need to continue to recognize the sacrifice of those men and women in uniform, those first responders, and continue to do that. And my last point was, we need to continue to be compassionate because I think this is what sets us apart from Russia, from China, from other countries around the world.
And then McRaven talks about how he's confident that our generals and admirals and top military brass would have specifically warned Donald Trump about how the first thing Iran would have done is try to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and how we should have been ready immediately if the plan was going to be a blockade or whatever our plan was. We should have been ready for them to shut down the Strait of Hormuz so we could either have moved in right away or put on the pressure right away with a blockade. But now we've come in essentially too late. And now we need to really consider negotiations and a diplomatic solution. And again, this is coming from the most decorated admiral, Navy SEAL that's out there. And he's talking about the importance of negotiations right now. And he's warning about the dangers of escalating. This is a 3-alarm warning. Can you hear it, folks? Here, play this clip.
But here's what the military leaders would have told the president from the very beginning. They would have said, look, changing regimes is hard. So if you think by bombing them, they're all of a sudden going to give up, probably not going to happen. Particularly in Iran, the regime is wide and it is deep. So taking out the supreme leader just means that somebody else is going to step up. And oh, by the way, you took out an 86-year-old man. Now you got a 56-year-old man. And even according to Israeli intelligence, the new regime is even more hardline. So they would have told him, the military would have told the president, regime change is hard. the military would have also said, we've never bombed our way to victory. So in no point in time in the history of the military, we bombed our way to victory. It was going to be hard. The final thing they would have also said, look, if you think there's going to be this uprising and we'll have a Jeffersonian democracy, that's probably not going to happen. It could, but it's unlikely. But the one thing they would absolutely positively have told the president is you never, ever, ever, ever talk about Iran without talking about the Straits of Hormuz. They would have told the president, as soon as you start bombing Iran, they are going to do what they can to close the Straits of Hormuz. And clearly they have done that. So now the question is, going forward, where do we go? Well, the Iranians have come forward and they said, if you will lift the blockade, that we will open the straits. I've been saying for the last several weeks that this is something the president should have put on the table. He should have told the Iranians, I will lift the blockade if you will open the straits, because he's got to think about what are his strategic goals at this point in time. The world economy is getting crushed, and the only way it's going to pick up is if we can open the straits. Unfortunately, now that the Iranians have come forward with this offer, I'm not sure the president will buy it. But the blockade, he can turn the blockade on, turn the blockade off. He should seriously consider this offer from the Iranians.
And more right here from McRaven. Play this clip.
As a retired military officer, you technically still fall under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. However, nobody in the history of the United States military that was retired has ever been prosecuted for speaking up when they were retired. And I do think it is important. Well, I'm a huge fan of Mark Kelly. I appreciated what he did. I understand the controversy behind it. It came at a kind of a critical moment, and I understand the concern. But I tell my audiences, the young soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, the same thing. You have an obligation to follow the legal orders of the commander-in-chief. You swore an oath, but you also should not be following illegal orders. Now, for the young troops, that's hard. The young soldiers, they're not trying to parse the legal and the illegal, but this is really the responsibility of the senior officers, as I once was, and the senior enlisted, to express their concern when they see something that isn't legal. But I can tell you, in my 37 years in the military, never once did I feel like somebody had given me an illegal order. There may have been orders I didn't like and that I questioned, but they were never illegal. And therefore, you still have an obligation to follow them if they are legal.
And then also, here's what McRaven had to say about not following unlawful orders as well. Here's what he also had to say, in addition to what I just shared with you. Let's play this clip.
If the order is given, not the rhetoric that comes out of the White House, but the order that is given, if it is a legal order, we have an obligation to follow that legal order. And I have told soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, time and time again, even in this time when I have been critical of the president, that they swore an oath and they need to follow legal orders. However, if the order is not legal, then they also have an obligation not to follow it and to raise that as an issue.
And how do you determine whether one is legal? So, for example, to say we're going to take out every bridge and every power station in Iran, there are many bridges and power stations that presumably have no conceivable dual use. And therefore could not be considered military targets. So you're targeting civilian bridges and civilian power stations. As I say, if the order is all of them, some of them surely are not dual use, then it is by conventional terms a war crime. How would an officer determine what to do?
Well, I can tell you that these discussions are going on, Fareed. The senior military officers are talking with the Secretary of Defense and kind of laying out their concerns about which of these targets are legitimate military targets. We would never, target a school. We would never target a church. We would never target, buildings or facilities where civilians are not part of the military apparatus that we're trying to defeat. So I guarantee you these conversations are going on, and the judge advocate generals that are part of the discussion in the military will also voice their opinions to both the military leaders and the civilian leaders. So these conversations are happening, which may be one reason why you didn't see, after the president said he was going to bomb them back to the Stone Age, we didn't end up doing that. So we'll see how this plays out going forward. But I know that these senior officers are having these conversations with the political leaders.
Just to remind you about McRaven's famous commencement speech that he gave at the University of Texas in 2014. Here's what he said. Play this clip.
If you think it's hard to change the lives of 10 people, change their lives forever, you're wrong. I saw it happen every day in Iraq and Afghanistan. A young Army officer makes a decision to go left instead of right down a road in Baghdad, and the 10 soldiers with him are saved from a close-in ambush. In Kandahar province, Afghanistan, a non-commissioned officer from the female engagement team senses that something isn't right and directs the infantry platoon away from a 500-pound IED, saving the lives of a dozen soldiers. But if you think about it, not only were those soldiers saved by the decisions of one person, but their children were saved, and their children's children. Generations were saved by one decision, one person. But changing the world can happen anywhere, and anyone can do it. So what starts here can indeed change the world. But the question is, what will the world look like after you change it? Well, I'm confident that it will look much, much better. But if you'll humor this old sailor for just a moment, I have a few suggestions that may help you on your way to a better world. And while these lessons were learned during my time in the military, I can assure you that it matters not whether you ever served a day in uniform. It matters not your gender, your ethnic or religious background, your orientation, or your social status. Our struggles in this world are similar, and the lessons to overcome those struggles and to move forward, changing ourselves and changing the world around us, will apply equally to all.
And here's another kind of famous part of that incredible commencement speech, especially as we head to graduation season. Here's what he had to say. Play this clip.
Finally, in SEAL training, there's a bell, a brass bell that hangs in the center of the compound for all the students to see. All you have to do to quit is ring the bell. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to wake up at 5 o'clock. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to be in the freezing cold swims. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to do the runs, the obstacle course, the PT, and you no longer have to endure the hardships of training. All you have to do is ring the bell to get out. If you want to change the world, don't ever, ever ring the bell.
And now I want to go to a minute to former NATO Commander Wesley Clark. Here's what he described in terms of our military capabilities being degraded, our Patriot systems and our THAAD systems being severely damaged by Iran. Let's play this clip.
It's a substantial amount of money, but the money's less important than the actual assets that have been expended. And so we've lost radars from attacks. They're hard to replace. We're down to about 50% of our Tomahawk land attack missile inventory. We've shot up maybe a third of our ballistic missile intercept capacity and maybe half of the very high altitude THAAD missile inventory. These inventories on these missiles take, in some cases, several years to replace. And in addition, the ships that are out there that have them have to be replenished. And that's an operation in itself. So the money is important, yes, but it's less important than the actual production behind it, Pamela.
And more from former NATO Commander General Wesley Clark right here as he completely dismantles the Trump regime's overarching kind of foreign policy, whatever you want to call it, or the foreign policy via erratic, contradictory social media posts. Let's play this clip right here.
You can't launch an operation in secret that nobody's ever heard about and then expect them to jump on board. They have to go to their parliaments. They have to look at public opinion. And when we've needed NATO and we go through the process, they're there. And if we continue to go through this process, they will be there for us. They know that this is in their interest, and the Brits are coming along, the French are coming along, and yes, there's criticism. Allies are democracies. It's what Winston Churchill said. The problem with allies is they each have their own opinions. And so that's the truth about NATO. But we need those allies. We need them militarily. We need their ships, their mine clears. We need them diplomatically. And of course, they're economically integral to the United States, as the King pointed out in his speeches yesterday. So it is important we deal with NATO through the NATO process. We know how to do that. We've done that before, but you can't do it simply by a surprise operation and a couple of tweets and expect them to jump in line. They're not U.S. states. They're their own sovereign countries.
And then shifting from these military leaders to a very well-known University of Chicago professor on international affairs, Professor Pape, I want to share with you what he had to say about the current situation in Iran, what they're probably doing, and the truth about the current geopolitical situation. Here's what Professor Pape has to say. Let's play this clip.
Anytime soon, and Iran is probably starting to lay the groundwork for developing nuclear weapons over the next maybe year or so. And that would also dovetail with why they're talking with Pakistan, a nuclear weapons state that helped Iran with centrifuges to start its program in the first place, and also Russia, another nuclear weapons state that's been a military ally of Iran. So if Iran is going to pursue this very aggressive agenda to truly emerge as the fourth center of world power with nuclear weapons, it needs allies, and it looks like it's working with its allies, and it's certainly working with its allies better than we're working with ours.
There you have it, folks. I think when you hear all of those voices, intelligent people speaking, and I think we need to listen. And you know that Trump ain't listening to, anybody. It's important that I think we hear those voices. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe. Help us get to 7 million subscribers. And thanks for watching.
New Meidas merch. Head to store.MeidasTouch.com today and get yourself the best pro-democracy gear and show your support. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.